All right, we're continuing with Jonah. Surprise, it's Jonah again. I hope you've read it a few times. We will read, we're up to chapter 2. There's only 4 chapters. This is my third message. So the first 2 are on chapter 1, and we've got 2 messages on chapter 2. I don't know what the others will uncover and how many messages, we'll see. But it's a very small chapter in the Bible, the book of Jonah, is a very small book in the Bible with only 4 small chapters, and yet there's so much treasure in there. So Jonah 2. Then Jonah prayed to the Lord, his God, from the stomach of the fish, and he said, I called out in my distress to the Lord, and he answered me. I cried for help in the depth of Sheol, and you heard my voice. For you had cast me into the deep of the sea, and the current engulfed me, and your breakers and billows, they passed over me. So I said, I have been expelled from your sight. Nevertheless, I will look again to your holy temple. Waters encompassed me to the point of death. The great deep engulfed me. Weeds wrapped around my head. I descended to the roots of the mountains. The earth with its bars were around me forever. But you have brought my life from the pit, O Lord my God. While I was fainting away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you into your holy temple. Those who regard vain idols forsake their faithfulness, but I will sacrifice to you with the voice of thanksgiving. That which I have vowed, I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Then the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah up onto dry land. First question I want to ask you, have you ever been in a dark place? I know I have. Ever been in a dark place? Like it is the worst scenario, and you feel so hopeless and you don't know. I've been in the place where I can't even pray. And I've been a believer all my life, and I get to that place where I'm just so overwhelmed with the circumstance and the situation that I don't even know how to form words to pray. And I don't even feel like I know how to even address the situation before God. And then there's sometimes when time goes on and the situations don't get better, and I'm a few days on into a situation, but sometimes I'm doing this. I just don't want to pray. I'm a bit cranky about the whole thing, and a bit miffed with God, and I'm giving him the silent treatment. And sometimes I feel shamed and alone in it. And I just don't know how to address it. I don't know how to overcome it or how to see it change and what to do. And other times I feel like I'm praying about it over and over again. Like, oh God, here I am again. Will you do this? This problem. Can you not see this problem? Do you see what's going on here? And I feel like I'm dragging up, particularly my children. I feel like the weight that a mother carries for the child never lifts off. We continuously, even as adults, when they're going through something, it's like this weight that comes upon us. And I feel like sometimes I'm bombarding God with prayer. I'm just muttering on and on and on. But my prayer is, help, will you just do something, And I'm carrying this weight of concern and stress. And then I notice that my prayers are 9 times out of 10 based out of fear. I start to realize that my prayers are based out of, please God, would you, I'm not sure that you will. I hope you will. I'm not sure that they deserve it, or, that you would want to do it for them or for me, or, it's full of questions about God's character. Sometimes it's not the said thing. It's like there was a verse that corrected me when we had a car accident and I was in hospital, and I was believing God for healing because, I'd bruised heart and 8 of my ribs had popped away from my breastbone. I was in a lot of pain, whiplash, shoulders, lacerations, all types of things going on. and believing God for healing. And I wasn't getting the healing I wanted. Instead, I had this journey to go through. And I remember sitting there going, why? I don't understand it. I've been tithing. I've been reading the Bible. I've been praying. I don't drink. I don't swear. I don't have sex. I don't, except for my husband. I don't do all these things. So I look at my halo. It's good. And I was looking for the reason why the bad had happened. And I was justifying myself. And I came across a verse in Job. I think it's like chapter 40 or 42, somewhere in there. In the beginning of it, it says, will you justify yourself and thus condemn me? And I suddenly thought, I wasn't really meaning to point fingers at God. I was just like, why? What have I done wrong that's caused this calamity to happen, And I was trying to find out a reason and grappling with it in my mind. But in doing so, I was actually pointing fingers at God and saying, you caused this, you allowed this to happen to me, And yet, when I look back, there was a lot of opportunities that the enemy had because of things that I'd said. There was also a lot of good that came out of it. At the time, I didn't think so, because when you're in a fiery trial, it's not very pleasant. You just want out. Have you ever wanted to go, get me out of here? But because I pressed into God and started hearing from God, he started dealing with wrong attitudes that I had and wrong assumptions and things. And I think it was actually probably one of my biggest growing periods out of this trauma. So I grew a lot, I changed a lot, but there was certainly dark period. There was certainly times where it was a bit of a roller coaster where I was in the valley and then I'm okay with God and everything's going good and I'm full of faith, and then I'm down in the valley again, and then I'd be up and down. So I'm sure you can relate, because I'm sure that you're like me. We have situations where we can stand strong in faith and other times we're just knocked flat on our bottoms and the stuffing knocked out of us and we don't know what to do and how to deal with it. And so I feel I relate to Jonah, even though Jonah had done things wrong and Jonah was running from God. It's funny because he was in this twisted thinking that he's running from God and he doesn't want to do what God's telling him to do. But at the same time, he's declaring to the sailors, my God is the Lord and I believe in him, and, all this type of stuff. And so he's like in this false economy, I suppose, in his head where he thinks that he's right with God, but he also knows that he's running from God and not doing what God says in his law. And I think that's the same with us too. Sometimes we go through situations and we go, why are we here? But we know that we've played a part sometimes to get there, and the choices that we've made, we're bearing the consequence of. Like I remember recently going, I was just so stupid. No wonder this is happening. I've done things wrong here, and I haven't been wise with it. But then there's also this whole keep believing in God. And it's just a really weird situation. And Jonah reflects that to me and makes me think about it. It says in verse 1 there, then Jonah prayed to the Lord, his God, from the stomach of the fish. We know when he prayed this prayer was day 3. So he's been in the whale day 3. How we know it was day 3 was because then the Lord commanded in verse 10 him to be vomited out. And we know that Scripture tells us he was in the belly of the whale for 3 days and 3 nights. So I want to know what he was doing on day 1 and day 2, don't you? Like, was he doing the sulks? Was he doing the tantrums? What was his prayer like? Because I'm sure he was saying and doing something. It's just not recorded. But I'm sure if he's like us, I don't think that I would have been going, thank you, O Lord, for this wonderful situation I'm in. I trust you. I think I would have been throwing the biggest mickeys and getting very angry and tantrum throwing. Unfortunately, I'm a great tantrum thrower towards God. And here he is in day 3, and he's finally at the right place, because this prayer that he prays is enough to ignite God to command the fish for him to be released. So this prayer is got secrets to it. This prayer has ways of praying in it when you're in a hard place. And so some of the things that stand out to me in it, I've highlighted. In verse 2, it says, I called out in my distress. So first of all, he's calling out rather than doing the sulks, which I often do. I do the silent treatment to God. And he answered me. So he's making a statement. He's like, this is his prayer. Like, this is not how prayer normally looks. We're reading a prayer. We're not reading about a prayer. We're reading a prayer. So prayer normally looks like, please God, won't you? Will you hear me? Will you listen to me, God, please? But he's not going, God, I'm calling out in my distress and you hear me. Like, it's a statement of knowing, God, you're hearing me. You hear my cry. And you answered me. He's saying answered me is the first statement. You hear me and you answer me. But there was no answer. He's still inside the fish. He hasn't had the answer. He can't even see the answer. He's still inside the fish on the way to hell, on his last breath. But he's speaking as if God has answered him. And then he says, I cried for help in the depth of Sheol, and you've heard my voice. So it's all very positive. And then he talks about a bit about the situation. And I think sometimes Christians get into the mistake of going, we better not tell anybody our problem because that's not faith. And I've seen people, like I remember a lady who was suffering with cancer, and we were praying for her, but she didn't want me to use the word cancer, the C word. She's like, don't use the C word when you pray for me. Don't you speak that over me. Like, is that faith or is that actually fear? I'm scared that if you say it, it's going to become reality and it's going to be, sealed over my life. And unfortunately, that lady did pass away because she would not let anybody address the situation. And she basically denied. She wouldn't do anything about it. She wouldn't talk about it. She basically denied everything until it was too late. And then she wanted treatment. Well, it was all too late because, and she thought that was faith. And here I see that Jonah is actually saying, you've cast me into the deep, in the heart of the seas, and currents have engulfed me, and breakers are passing over me. Like he's acknowledging, this is my problem, God. This is the situation I'm faced with. But then in verse 4, nevertheless, and I think that's the issue. We often in prayer go, God, I've got no finances. Or God, can you see this health issue and this problem or whatever? And we whinge about it and gripe about it. And exclamation mark, what are you going to do about it? That sort of attitude that we throw at him. Whereas here, he's saying it and then he's going, nevertheless, comma or semicolon, there's more. And he changes track with that. I will look again towards your holy temple. He's saying, I'm in a really hard place, but however, I choose to look towards you. I watched a wonderful, if you're on Instagram and I've got your thing, I would have sent it to you, a big long testimony some of you would have seen of a person whose baby died within minutes of being born and then was in a humicrid for 2 days. And the way they prayed in that situation was this. God, they say this is what it is. This is the problem. Nevertheless, even if, I believe you're going to heal her, but even if they don't, I'm still yours. They've taken their for sale sign down. They've taken the condition away and said, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, You can cast me in the fire. God will protect me. But even if he doesn't, I'm not worshipping you. I'm not giving in to you. And I found that that's a key. Like when Ethan was in his really bad place, and he was attempting suicide all the time and doing crazy stuff, I had to say, God, I'm believing these things about Ethan. I'm believing that he is righteous. I'm believing that he is saved. Nevertheless, if he does die, I will cry, but I will not stop trusting you and believing in you. I know that you have got the best in mind here, and it's like that. So Jonah's doing the same thing. Here's my problem, but nevertheless, I'm going to keep looking to your holy temple. I'm going to keep looking to you. And where is he? He's under the earth, right down in the bottom of the sea. When if a whale can dive, the sperm whale that we studied last time can dive 3,000 meters. That's a long way under the earth. And he's saying, I'm going to look to you. And he's looking up towards heaven and towards the temple. In verse 6, he says, you have brought my life to the pit, O Lord, my God. And he basically is declaring, God, you've taken me to this place because you're wanting to do something inside me. And while I was fainting away, I've remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you. And then he talks about the unfaithfulness of people that worship idols, which is ironic because he's probably referring to the sailors above that were idol worshippers who were all praying to their gods, not knowing that once they threw him in the sea became calm, and they all made sacrifices to God and vowed to God, and now were faithfully serving the true God and had abandoned their idols. And here he is like going, I'm not like them. But he's actually, he was like them, but just in a very different way. He's like still Christian, but he was doing things he shouldn't be doing, or not doing things that he should have been doing as well. And then it says this last statement, which I love. In verse 9, he says, I will sacrifice to you. What's the sacrifice that he's going to do? With the voice of thanksgiving. You know how hard that is? Like, I'm sure you've experienced it. It's hard to give praise to God in a dark and serious moment. We had a situation many years ago when we were first married, when we went from bank to bank to try and get loans, and we kept getting rejected. And eventually we went to a bank and got accepted, and we're like, yay. So you pay like 30% of whatever money it is to the builder for them to build your house. And they've done the soil testing and the applications, and they've graded it, and they've put out all the formwork, and they're ready to do the pouring of the cement slab. And I receive a phone call from the bank. This poor young lady crying on the other end of the phone saying, I'm so sorry, Mrs. Nosworthy, but I put down your monthly wage as your weekly wage. She got it really wrong. And she's like, you can't afford this. And I'm like, it's too late. Like, we've already given 30% of the money, and we've been making payments for the last month or two. Like, can't you rethink this through? And she's like, I'm going to lose my job. And she was really upset. And I just said to her, look, can you please go away and speak to your manager and let them see that we've been making payments, and ask if they will continue with it. You can see, because we paid off the land first before we did the building, you can see our history of paying off the land, even with our small income. Can you please go away and think about it? And it took a couple of days for her to get back to me. But during that time, as soon as she hung up, do you think I felt like rejoicing? Like, I started crying. I was 7 months pregnant. And I'm like, ugh, like really hormonal, really upset. I remember it was pouring down rain in Toowoomba, and we had this long driveway, and I'm standing at the door waiting for Darren to come home from work, and I'm bawling and bawling. And I get this verse, or this song actually come to me. Some of us will know it. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say. But you know how I thought, okay, the Bible says to rejoice in God, to bring a sacrifice of praise. Then he's enthroned to make a judgment. I will do that. But it's going to be very hard because I really don't feel like it. And so this is how it sounded when I first started. Sorry for the noise, but rejoice in the Lord always. And again I say rejoice. I was bawling and trying to sing this song, Rejoice in the Lord. It was certainly making a joyful noise. Not much rejoicing at that point, but a lot of words that should say that I was rejoicing and happy. And I kept singing it until the point where I was able to sing, rejoice, rejoice, And again, I say rejoice. And it was warfare, because I was pushing back the enemy's thoughts and words to me. And in fact, I had a vision of it, that the enemy had been like Dracula with his big cloak coming around my mind and over my thoughts, bringing confusion and darkness over me. And as I had started to sing Rejoice in the Lord, it was like rain falling from heaven, but just a light shower of light, not water, but light, little droplets of light. But then by the time I was going, rejoice, rejoice, and again I say rejoice, it was like I was invisible. You couldn't see me. I was in a beam of light. And there was the enemy in the corner cowering under his cape. Yeah. So bringing a thanksgiving offering. It's an offering. You don't feel like it, but it's an offering that you're offering, Lord. And here is Jonah offering a voice of thanksgiving to God, and that he has vowed that he will pay. And then he ends with the statement, salvation is from the Lord. What a statement while he's in a fish's stomach, heading down, 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 down to Sheol and to hell. And he declares salvation is from the Lord. That's faith. That's what faith looks like. It's not pleading. Why is it not pleading? Well, because there's a confidence in God's character. There's a confidence that God's with him, that it's his God, and that he'll watch over him no matter what. That salvation is the Lord's. And it's mind-blowing to think that here's a man that's been inside a whale. I mean, time without a clock and in darkness would go so slow. You would feel like you were in the stomach forever. But yet he's declaring salvation belongs to the Lord. And what does that act of faith do? But moves God. Faith moves God, Scripture tells us. And it moved God to command the fish to vomit Jonah up onto the dry land. He was expelled from death to life. He wouldn't have known that. Can you imagine being Jonah? You're inside this stomach of complete darkness. I used to go caving as a teenager. And I know what it's like to go crawling through a cabin. You come out into the big open cave and you have to preserve your light, so you turn it off. You can hold your hand in front of your face and not see anything. The dark is almost like it feels dark rather than just seeing dark. It's an amazing experience. And then when the lights come on, it's like bing, we can see all the sparkles and everything. But he would have been in that darkness, inside the whale, not a comfortable environment to be in. And while he's declaring salvation belongs to the Lord, there would have been a time period between him being vomited out. He wouldn't have known that the fish was heading up. He would have just gone, I'm inside this fish and the fish is doing what it's doing. Here he is for a few more days. He's been moving around. He's still moving around. It didn't feel like anything had changed. Yet he had declared salvation is from the Lord, and he meant it. He was in the place where he shouldn't have meant it and didn't feel like doing it, but he meant it to the point that God turned around and had the fish vomit him out. Imagine being in the darkness, being in this stomach, and then suddenly you're being forced out for one, and you're on dry land. Like, how did that happen? Jesus says he relates to this story. It's the only person that Jesus said he's like. He said to the disciples and the Pharisees, the only sign that you're going to get is the sign of Jonah. I'm going to be like 3 days in the belly of the whale, in the heart of the earth, just like Jonah. And it's interesting to see that this represents, this prayer not only teaches us how to pray and to be a person of faith, but it also shows us a connection prophetically through to Jesus. So that means when I was reading this chapter 2, I saw the weeds wrapped around my head, and I did a study, and it's not actually the word weeds, it's the word reeds, R-E-E-D-S. But people don't believe that it should be reeds, so a lot of the Bibles have been changed to the word weed, even though there's other word for the word weed in Hebrew. They've moved it to be the word weeds, because how could he have reeds like papayas grass in the shallow when he's in the deep? I also think it's interesting it's just around his head, not around his body, his arms, like if it was seaweed, it would have been everywhere. But it triggered me to think this prayer might represent Jesus. And so I'm going to just show you a slide. You can see the first one's already up for you, where Hebrews 5:7, it says, the depth of the days of his flesh for it. He offered up both prayers and supplications with loud voice and tears to the one who was able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his piety. That's referring to Jesus. Jesus, that's what happened. He offered up prayers. We don't think that Jesus is like Jonah, but he is. He is like Jonah. Jonah was disobedient, but Jesus was obedient, but he is like the anti-version of Jesus. And so at the same time, you think about it, Jesus actually had to take on all our sin and all our disobedience and be as Jonah at the same time. And so Jesus here offered up prayers and supplications with loud crying because he knew that God was able to save him from death. And we see that with Jonah too. I cried out in my distress. In Psalm 30, which is a prophetic psalm, a lot of these other verses are prophetic psalms that point towards Jesus. It says, O Lord my God, I cried to you for help. You heard me. O Lord, you have brought up my soul from Sheol, which is where he was headed, Jonah. You have kept me alive that I would not go down to the pit. This is in reference to David saying it, but in reference prophetically to Jesus. I wanted to stop for a minute and help you fall in love with the Bible. You can read the story of Jonah on one level and it will speak to you. We've just been talking about what Jonah's prayer has taught us individually. Yeah? But then there's another way of looking at the Bible where everything in the Old Testament, that's why it's called the Old, is because it's been done away with, but it was foundational. It was because it points to Jesus. And so over and over again, when you're reading things, you think, how does this relate to Jesus? You'll start to get a greater picture and a greater understanding. And so here we can see that verse 2 of Jonah is pointing to Jesus. Verse 3. All right. For you have cast me into the deep and into the heart of the seas, and the currents engulfed me, and all your breakers and billows passed over me. Sounds like Psalm 69, verse 1. Save me, O God, for the waters are up to my neck. I have sunk into the miry depths, and there is no footing. I have drifted into deep waters where the floods engulf me. Same sort of picture. In Ephesians 4:9. Now the expression he ascended, what does it mean, except that he also had descended into the lower parts of the earth. This is referring to Jesus. And he who descended is himself also he who ascended far above into the heavens so that he might fulfill all things. So here we see Jesus as saying he's descended into the lower parts of the earth as well. And that's what's happening to Jonah, into the heart of the seas. Notice deep represents, I put in brackets there for you, what it represents is hell. And when it talks about seas, it's talking about nations and angry people, the waves, angry people or being stirred up in unrest or trouble from the work of the enemy. And that's exactly what happened, of course, with the Romans mocking him and the Jews saying, kill him. And so Jesus was thrown into the heart of the seas, into the nations and into the people, and he was cast into the deep through death on the cross. Verse 4, so I said, I have been expelled from your sight. Nevertheless, I will look again to your holy temple. As for me, I said in my alarm, I am cut off from before your eyes. Nevertheless, you heard my voice of my supplication when I cried to you. This is David talking prophetically about Jesus, saying that he was cut off from God, and yet you've heard when I cried to you. Matthew 27:46, it says, about the third hour he cried out with a loud voice, saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? So what really stands out to me there is Jesus is crying out to God, why have you forsaken me? Like you've turned away from me. And there's that expelled from your sight aspect for Jonah. But also it's got the third hour. Jonah was on day 3 when he prayed out to God. And so it's also connecting it there. Verse 5, we have the water encompassed me to the point of death. The great deep engulfed me. Weeds or reeds, as I've said, were wrapped around my head. In Psalm 18:4, the cords of death encompassed me. The torrents of ungodliness terrified me. The cords of Sheol surrounded me. The snares of death confronted me. And in my distress I called upon the Lord, and I cried to my God for help. And he heard my voice out of his temple, and my cry for help towards him came to his ears. And then Matthew 27:29, after twisting together the crown of thorns, so around the head, they put it on his head, and a reed was in his right hand. That's the same word, the reed. And they knelt down before him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews." So I think that Jonah is like got that picture of Jesus with the crown of thorns. It's not a reed. Jonah's got the reeds, but it's still that crown being placed around Jonah's head. And when you actually look at the meaning of the words there, it is using the word wrap is the word to be crowned or to be turbaned like a high priest. And so it has that connection to Jesus there. Verse 6, I descended to the roots of the mountain. The earth and its bars was around me forever, but you have brought up my life from the pit, O Lord my God. So in Acts 2:31, he looked ahead and spoke of the resurrection of Christ, that he was neither abandoned to Hades, nor did his flesh suffer any decay. This Jesus God raised up again, to which we are all witnesses. And so we know that Jesus went to Hades, and he went down there, and yet he was resurrected. He was brought up, like it says there in verse 6, you have brought my life up from the pit and from that Sheol, Hades. There, the difference is Sheol's Hebrew and Hades is the Greek word for that. And so we've got this whole picture that Jesus is being raised again, very similar to it. I also think it's interesting that when he was talking to Peter about the revelation of Jesus being Christ and Lord, and he says, on that rock, on that revelation, the gates of hell will not prevail. And you can see the meaning of their, the word bars is prison, tribulation, and city gates. And so it's got that same emphasis. Verse 7, while I was fainting away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you and into your holy temple. In Psalms 3:4, I was crying to the Lord with my voice, and he answered me from his holy mountain. Mountain and temple are pictures of the presence of God, taking us back to Eden with the mountain. Luke 23:46, Jesus crying out with a loud voice, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And having said this, he breathed his last. I put that there because that was his prayer, and he actually was putting it in trust towards God. So he wasn't turning towards the temple as Jonah and Psalms, but he was going, I'm giving it to you, God, as an act of turning towards God. Verse 8, those who regard vain idols forsake their faithfulness. And of course, Jesus didn't regard vain idols. But in Philippians 2:8, it says, being found in the appearance of the man, so he was in our form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death. So he was faithful. Obedience and faithfulness go hand in hand. Jesus was obedient or faithful to the point of death, even the death on a cross. For this reason also God highly exalted him and bestowed on him the name which is above every other name. So Jesus actually got the name Lord and Master and Supreme Authority above everything because he was obedient to the point of death, and he was willing to die on that cross and go to Hades for us. Verse 9, but I will sacrifice to you with a voice of thanksgiving. That which I have vowed I will pay. Salvation is from the Lord. In Ephesians 5:2, and you'll see a whole heap of them up there. It's offering sacrifices, fulfilling promises, salvation belonging to the Lord, the wages of sin, like he'll make the payment like Jonah did. He'll pay his sacrifice. And that's exactly what Jesus was doing, paying the sacrifice for us at that time. So death appeared final. And sometimes the situations you're facing or the temptations, the trials, the whatever issues of death that are around our life, whether it be emotional, physical, or spiritual, they can feel final. However, it was not final for Jonah, it was not final for Jesus, and it is not final for us who believe. For example, it says, but if the same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, he who raised Christ Jesus from the dead will also give life to your mortal body through his Spirit that dwells in you. I love this verse because it's not talking about somewhere down in the future. It's talking about now, bringing life to me. If I will have the Spirit of God in my life, this is why I believe being baptized with the Holy Spirit, not just having a small relationship with him, but having him dwell, partner and fellowship with me on a day-to-day basis brings life to me. And there has been so many testimonies that time doesn't allow for me to share where I have been in the darkest of places and I didn't know how to pray. I didn't know what to do except to speak in tongues. And when I spoke in tongues and spoke with the Holy Spirit, peace comes to my mind first of all, stillness comes to me, and I'm able to start thinking rather than the panic or the despair that's overcome me. I'm actually able to, it's like the waters part as such, and I'm able to start thinking clearly, and then I can start to hear from God direction for my life, or I hear a promise for my life, or something that actually brings me hope and allows me to get up out of the darkness, out of the deep that I'm in, and to trust in God that things will change. So the Spirit of God can raise somebody from the dead. And one of the things I've got to get through my mind when I face a situation is that I'm smelling death. You know, like, here's an example. With Ethan, when he was trying to kill himself, when he was wearing cross-gender clothing, when he was doing drugs and alcohol, when he was not just doing them minorly, but to major extents, like 2 bottles of gin or something he drank one night and ended in hospital. Like, he was doing extreme stuff that was distressing, especially for a mother, incredibly distressing. I had to either come under the weight of that death. I could be complaining. My natural instinct was to complain. My natural instinct was to curse the friends that were giving it to him and to want them to be away from him. But instead, I had to bless and curse not. I had to trust God in it. And it's hard because you smell death. And it's not just the thing that's before you, it's his life that he was wasting. It's his soul that was heading to hell. It was the weight of all the destruction that he was doing to his physical body, to his emotions, to his relationship with life and death itself and the greater picture. I could smell death. And I hear people all the time complain to me, my wife's doing this, my husband's doing that, my kid's this, my work boss is this. And I'm like, are they walking in life? No, they're walking in death. So stop complaining about the death. Stop taking whiffs of it. It stinks. It's not pleasant to be around death. But start believing in the resurrection power of God. Because if the same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead can raise my body, he can transform it momentarily like that. And this is the thing that we have to understand. Jonah was in darkness and then suddenly being propelled into light and onto the land. Salvation had manifested. Yeah? Jesus is laying his physical body. There's no breath in it. There's no heartbeat. There's not a one cell alive. It is dead, dead, dead. And next minute, alive. Lazarus, 3 days, dead, 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 alive. So how long does it take for resurrection? A moment, and things can change if we will be in faith. Not go by sight, not go by what we're seeing the enemy do, but we pray from the place of faith. God is my salvation. And this is important for us to learn and to live from, because those who walk by the Spirit and live by the Spirit, these are the kingdom, these are the children of God, these are the sons of God. This is how we overcome sin, it says, is by the Spirit. Learning to live in that realm, in that kingdom, in faith in God, even when it smells of death all around us. That's hard. It's hard not to throw tantrums. I'm not saying it's easy. And maybe we were like Jonah. I'm guessing he was throwing tantrums for 2 days and then finally got to the right place. Maybe it takes a time. I know for me, it's getting shorter and shorter. I still throw tantrums. I'm still human. Why? But it's getting shorter. When I see the problem, I start to go, okay, God, what do I do here? How do I get into faith? What do you say about this situation that can transform from death to life and life abundant, that can transform any situation? Nothing is too big for God. Nothing is too far out of his reach. God can transform it if we will see who God is, that he's for you, not against you. He's for them and not against them. And he will bring life. He will. It's who he is. He can't help himself. And he's moved by faith. He's not moved by pleading. He's not moved by tantrums. He's not moved by sulking. He's not moved by pretending to be full of faith. He can see right into the heart. So let's instead be honest and transparent with him and say, hey, God, this is the situation I'm facing. This is the circumstance I'm in. It stinks. I don't like it. But I'm going to nevertheless put my trust in you. Nevertheless, you are my salvation. Nevertheless, you hear, know, and no matter how long that takes that I'm in the whale, no matter how long I see darkness, I will trust you, because this is your nature. This is your character, that you want to bring salvation and deliverance to all. It is God's desire that no man perish. Yeah? Curses cannot alight without cause. And often we give cause by praying from the wrong aspect or processing through the wrong way, not living in love. For example, going quickly as I'm finishing, with Ethan, as I said, I could have cursed. My prayers wanted to be, God, I cut off the relationships of all those people that are bringing him drugs and selling him things and feeding him all these lies and deceptions and stuff. Cut them all off. Get rid of them all. And then, I don't know, was it about 18 months ago, 2 young men walked into this church and sat with me at the front, if you remember. One was his drug dealer and one was his drug-taking friend. And they'd come to thank me for believing in them and for loving them and to tell me they'd come to the Lord. Yeah? That is God. Resurrection, not just to my own son, but to the people that were influencing him for evil. Because life is more powerful than death. Light is more powerful than darkness. God works wonders and miracles when we trust him and believe.